Imagine you are an intrepid paleontologist in the 1960s combing through the latest fossil finds from China. Your eyes immediately go to the incredibly preserved skeletons with feathers like Archaeopteryx and Confuciusornis. But then something catches your eye nearby. There's a strange, long-necked reptile unlike anything you've ever seen before. It has a body like a monitor lizard, 4 short legs, and a very long neck. You've just found a new kind of animal, a bizarre missing link between early land animals and modern-day whales. Well, not exactly. The truth is, this animal was discovered much earlier than the 1960s, but it is still very obscure even today. So here is one weird ancient reptile that looks like a mix between a snake and a whale, the Hyphalosaurus. Hi, and welcome to Paleologic. Today we are talking about the strange life of a serpent-like whale monster from prehistoric China. Let's get into it. When we think of prehistoric lakes, we often imagine a calm body of water teeming with fish and other aquatic creatures. But how about lakes full of giant predatory monsters? That may sound absurd, but there is evidence that such animals did exist. And we have countless examples of them from the famous Jehol group of lakes in China. This region is famous for its wealth of fossils from the early Cretaceous period, which include some of the most beautiful feathered dinosaurs ever found, such as the iconic Confuciusornis. But the Jehol biota wasn't just famous for its birds. It also had some very strange marine reptiles. One of the most bizarre groups of these creatures are the Corystodierans, a group of aquatic freshwater reptiles that were once thought to be closely related to turtles and crocodilians. This is no longer supported by newer studies, which show that they are more closely related to other extinct groups of reptiles known as the Lepidosauromorpha, which includes modern-day lizards and snakes. Chur was first named in 1964 to classify a group of similar-looking reptiles from the Jehol Lakes. These creatures were all relatively small, ranging from around a meter to over 3 meters in length. They had elongated bodies and necks and were fully adapted to life in the water. Their skulls were elongated and flattened from front to back, with narrow jaws filled with small teeth. Most of them also had paddle-like limbs and a long tail for powerful swimming. The oldest known member of the group is the genus Paleochorus, which lived as far back as the Triassic Period. But the majority of Chur taxa are known from the Cretaceous of China. Despite being small, Chur were successful animals. They are known from thousands of specimens from the famous Yixian Formation, the same formation where many feathered dinosaur fossils have been found. At least 18 different species of Corystoderm have been identified from this single location. This means that they were likely quite common in the area. In fact, they are the most common reptile found in the Yixian Formation, outnumbering the dinosaurs 10 to 1. The name Coelophyses comes from the Greek words keir, meaning hand, and stigos, meaning tail, referring to their hand-shaped tails. But despite their name, Corystoderms are not closely related to sauropods like Brachiosaurus or Diplodocus. Instead, they are more closely related to squamates, a group that includes modern-day lizards and snakes. But how exactly they are related to squamates is still up for debate. Some researchers believe they are part of the lepidosaurs themselves, making them more closely related to snakes than to turtles. However, others argue that they are only part of the larger group that includes lepidosauromorphs, but not necessarily lepidosauromorphs. Either way, they are definitely more closely related to lizards and snakes than any other major group of reptiles. While they do share a lot of similarities with modern-day squamates, such as their overall body shape, teeth, and lack of a shell, there are also some significant differences. For example, Chuane had a much larger head and neck than most squamates, with the exception of some large monitor lizards. They also had a completely different skull structure compared to lizards and snakes. While squamates have 2 temporal openings behind each eye socket, chordates only had 1 opening on each side. This would have given them a stronger bite force but made their skull less flexible. Another difference is their neck vertebrae. Lizards and snakes have 7 neck vertebrae, while Crostoderans had at least 9. Also, while modern-day snakes don't have limbs at all, Choristoderms retained 4 tiny legs. They are so small that they are barely visible externally, but are still clearly functional limbs. Even their fingers and toes were well developed. However, they were not used for walking. Instead, they were used to anchor themselves to objects when in the water. Even though choriosterns were small, they were still apex predators in their environment. Like modern-day crocodiles and turtles, they were carnivorous and ate mainly fish. One of the largest genera of Choristoderans, Hyphalosaurus, had very short limbs and a very long neck. It likely spent most of its time in the water with only its head sticking out. This is very similar to the way that modern-day marine iguanas and some species of sea turtles behave. Interestingly, the Chinese name for Hyphalosaurus literally translates to flower snake, referring to the delicate floral patterns on its bones. The type species, Hyphalosaurus medius, was around 3 meters long and weighed approximately 150 kilograms. It lived during the early Cretaceous period about 125 million years ago. It was named in 1978 after hundreds of specimens were found near the city of Huadian in Jilin Province, China. Since then, several other species of huala have been described. Huala salaris is known from a single individual that was found in 2005. It was smaller than H. medius, reaching a maximum length of only 60 centimeters. This individual was also unusually thin and likely died of starvation. It's possible that the population of H. chinensis was going through a hard time due to environmental changes, but it could also be that this individual simply didn't have the necessary adaptations to catch enough fish to eat. Hyphalosaurus had strong jaws and sharp teeth, which it used to catch and devour fish. Its long neck allowed it to reach into crevices and capture prey that other animals couldn't. Overall, it was perfectly adapted for life in the water. Its skull alone could make up over half of its total length, and its teeth were very distinct. They were shaped like cones and set at an angle to each other, which made them perfect for catching slippery fish. They also had strong ribs and a flexible backbone, which helped them bend their body while swimming. Its limbs were small and spatulate with long claws for grasping. While most of the chordate remains found in China are of fully aquatic forms like Hyphalosaurus, there were also some species that could venture on land. The genus Cynogobiops is a prime example of this. Unlike most of its relatives, Cynogobiops had much larger limbs. They could support their body weight and allow them to walk across land in search of new habitats or hunting grounds. They were also ambush predators, but they hunted on land instead of in water. Like other members of Chuanai, Cynopaps had elongated bodies and long snouts. They were about 1.5 meters long and lived in the same area as Hyphalosaurus. This suggests that they shared many of the same ecological roles. However, they also shared many similarities with modern-day amphisbaenians, a group of burrowing lizards that live in burrows and only rarely leave them to bask in the sun or hunt. This means that Choristoderans were not only successful in the water, but were also able to adapt to life on land. In addition to these 2 genera, there were also at least 15 others that lived in China during the Cretaceous, although most of them were only known from a few fragments. Unfortunately, because many of these creatures were only found as fragmented remains, it's difficult to tell whether or not they could move on land, or if they were fully aquatic. It's possible that they were all equally comfortable both in and out of the water. Unfortunately, despite the fact that thousands of chordate specimens have been found in China, we know next to nothing about their appearance. Most of the fossils are either too decayed or too poorly preserved for us to accurately reconstruct their skin. However, some researchers have suggested that they had spines along their back and that some may have had armor like shells. It's also entirely possible that their skin was smooth, like modern-day snakes. Until we find better preserved specimens, this will remain a mystery. Thanks to the abundance of fossils, China has given us a unique window into the past, allowing us to learn more about prehistoric ecosystems than any other place on Earth. We can learn about the daily lives of dinosaurs, birds, and even mammals from the safety of our own homes, but it also has given us a glimpse into a world full of monsters, the likes of which we haven't seen since. The discovery of the coelacanth. The choristoderms are proof that not all ancient reptiles looked like dinosaurs. While they weren't dinosaurs themselves, these creatures were just as fascinating. They were highly diverse and successful animals, thriving for tens of millions of years. Unfortunately, they are almost completely unknown outside of China, and their evolutionary history is still a mystery. If we ever want to learn more about them, we need to keep searching for fossils in China. Who knows what other surprises await us in the ancient lakes of the East? Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thank you to our supporters for making it possible. If you would like to see more episodes like this, please consider supporting us. And as always, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time on Paleologic.